going to do a voice check so we don't blast the radio. Testing. Yeah, just let me know what you've had for breakfast so I can just get it.
Well, I didn't have any breakfast at all. Didn't have any breakfast. Not yet.
Okay. All right. Do you mind if I...
No, go on. Do you think it's just, to make a play into something I don't want to talk about, I'm going to go at it.
Okay. Well, you've got a very big voice, Pete. It gives Dead or Alive a very distinctive sound. Now, I just wanted to know if you can talk about the difference between, say, your earlier days, and I know that you were in a band called Nightmares and Wax, and it was like a lot darker sound, and now you've got more of a Euro sound with Nuclear Patra. It's pretty diverse. Talk about how you've used your voice and in the different stages.
I've never had any vocal training. I was born with a big voice. When I first started off in a group, I'd never even been in front of a microphone before when we did Nightmares and Wax until I actually went out and did a live gig, and it was a total surprise to me and a total surprise to everybody. It's not everybody's cup of tea, my voice. Some people really hate it because I'm not one of those singers that can pussyfoot around and do soul songs. I can do it, but that's not appropriate for our sound. And as for us, one thing that I actually am starting to find slightly offensive on a personal note is I never like to categorise our sound as Euro, because then we're immediately put in the filing cabinet with what I consider to be total crap that doesn't deserve the light of day, like Wigfield and things like that. We started off as a rock band, and we took the technology that was available to modernise the approach of rock music. I mean, it's hard for other musicians to appreciate, but what we do is a lot harder than being a rock band, because you're relying on computers and stuff like that. Okay, you can program them, and they do the thing again, but it's much more difficult to program them than to stand around changing your guitar strings and stuff like that. I know there's obviously some affinity with Euro sounds, but my influences were things like Donna Summer records, and there's also influences from rock bands like the New York Dolls and stuff like that. I just happen to prefer the computerized sound. I still think it's really, really modern.
Yeah, well, it's actually becoming the sound of the moment, isn't it?
It's been the sound of the moment before. It comes around in cycles, and being a group that have worked as long as we have, people, particularly a record company, always expect you to go with whatever's happening at the moment. So you spend long times at the back of the filing cabinet because maybe they think it's Euro. To me, that's a little bit of a deadly word if you take it lightheartedly. I'm not in a position to take it lightheartedly now because it's 17 years down the line, and I certainly don't want to be put on a bill with crap like Wigfield or Lonnie Gordon who just don't have anything to do. I'm not bitching those artists. I just consider their work to be rubbish, mainly because they have no input into it. It is now, as I say, 17 years doing this in the business, darling. I'm starting to find the actual concept of other artists coming along with the song written for them, the production done for them, everything done for them. They're clogging up the arteries of the industry, and it makes it very, very difficult for other people to break through who've actually worked on it. It's, the thing that I find particularly offensive at the moment from Australia is, the likes of Gina G and, when Kylie was big and Jason Gone Again or Jason Donovan or whatever, I found them really offensive because they polluted the music industry. And, of course, record companies are largely like computers. They've got no heart or soul about the work. They just want something that's easy. So they go out with a producer, have dinner, give them a backhander, say, can you write a song for this imbecile? We'll milk them dry and throw them in the bin. And they expect every other act that comes along to be like that. I read a piece in one of your Australian magazines the other day, and I can't quote it exactly, but it was saying, Gina G's come back to her hometown, and she's no puppet. She chooses her own hairstyles and decides on what she's going to wear. It's the music industry, for God's sake. It's not panto. I find that, a bit sorry, and it's not that I'm coming across as a bitch about it. I just don't want anything to do with that type of act. Unfortunately, when we started our sound, especially with the Spin Me Round success, the producers we were working with then, who didn't invent our sound, Stock Aitken and Waterman, they didn't invent our sound. We went with it completed. We only went to them because the record company don't trust a band to go into the studio without a producer. They took our sound and just basically wheeled it off with a load of other imbeciles, and that makes me a bit sour.
Mm-hmm. what you were saying before, I find it sad that Australia only adopts acts like Kylie and Gina G after they've been accepted in countries like England.
It's not so much the Australian public as it's the Australian industry, because it's an easy job for them to say, well, this has been big in England, and take it along to the TV programmers. From what I can judge, the Australian music industry is very rock orientated, which is making it very, very narrow. There are many other things that happen, and I do really think there is a place for the Gina G's and the Kylie Minogues. In my mind, it's down the toilet, but in the general public's mind, it's just good time music. I just don't want to be... It's not that I want all the credit, for we do everything ourselves. I just wish the people behind the scenes would realise that we do it all ourselves, and then, give us a certain amount of respect.
How does Dead or Alive write material? You and Steve put work together?
Steve do it all, and we certainly don't labour over a hot sequencer. It's very easy. It's continued to be... it probably takes 4 minutes to write a song. The actual production palaver and making it contemporary with the sounds is the long process, because we always start with a song format. If you can't really do it on an acoustic guitar, which is an old-fashioned way of writing, it's not going to stand the test of time. Although I like the Prodigy's Firestarter, when you think of the things that go on in the industry, like publishing deals, and they hope that someone else is going to cover that song, I really can't see somebody sitting in a hotel foyer in 20 years doing Firestarter on the tinkly piano. So therefore it isn't a song, it's a production and a groove. We do music. But I do like their record, I'm not criticising them.
Mm-hmm. Oh, you've mentioned some of the artists that you like to listen to, like Donna Summer. You've, in the past, covered songs by artists like David Bowie and Blondie. Are they the people that you like to listen to at home, or...?
I don't actually... My record collection, if there is a record collection, if I was to look in the cupboard, is now non-existent, because I consider the quality and the optimism in music has really died. When we did the David Bowie and Blondie song, it was mainly because when a group who actually do their own music and produce it go into the studio, they're playing about with the controls and they're playing about with the keyboards and stuff, and you sort of just... It's in a very rock tradition. You start to jam on somebody else's song, and if it turns out good, you complete it and think, right, well, we'll take the sounds that we demoed on this song and we'll use it on our own song, etc. But when we recorded this album, we just signed a worldwide deal with PWL Records, which was Pete Waterman's label. We'd done our playing about in the studio with the Debbie Harry song and the David Bowie song, and then the record label started to fall to bits. So consequently, we didn't have enough time in the studio to continue composing our own music, so they were actually put on as sort of album fillers, although I like them. But the artists, I don't actually like any artist. I'm not saying I dislike them. The pop music's disposable, and I'm certainly not an admirer of David Bowie in this day and age. When I look back at his back catalogue and listen to stuff that he did, I do think he did some quality songs, but I think he should just call it a day now. There is a time to call it a day.
Yeah. David Bowie does drum and bass.
Yeah, I think he's absolutely crap, and... doing his Rebel, it just seemed appropriate at the time because we had the dressing up movement and all those things going on in London clubland. But it certainly wasn't engineered as a commercial success because it consequently didn't have any real commercial success. We recorded it under the name of International Crisis because we thought we'd get it on the radio and people wouldn't recognise it was Dead or Alive because people were saying, oh, your sound so old-fashioned. And we thought we'd do this song and it might get us on the radio and nobody'd know who it was, but the cat got out of the bag pretty quickly and everybody did, and consequently they didn't play it.
What about dance music? Do you listen to dance music at home? Are you a clubber?
Absolutely not. That's the other great contradiction. No, I find, maybe it's just my view, but I find all of the dance music that I've heard, when I hear the dance music, it's usually in a sound check when we're playing a club. I hear the PA system warming up, and I find it to be so negative, and it's not even music anymore. It just sounds like coffee percolators and a locked-in vocal. It's not music to me. It's a soundtrack to drug abuse. That's the way I see it.
You've been around for years, as you've said, and I'm just wondering what you've learned from the music business in terms of people being manufactured as trends and...
Well, I think the music business is the worst business of all, but when you've been in it as long as I have, there's no turning back. You can't just go home and get a job in a supermarket or something like that, and often I do envy people who have ordinary everyday jobs who can put it away at 5 o'clock. When you've actually made a product, which is your record, Firstly, your record companies, etc., try and turn you into part of the product, which I've always maintained I'm not. I make a record. People say to me, aren't you grateful for this, that and the other, aren't you grateful for your fan base and stuff? Well, I'm surprised, but I'm not grateful because I've given them something. I've given them the music, and it's the nearest thing to your blood when you work on it, and it's all you do. It's a very personal thing. I understand it's disposable, but I don't feel indebted to the people that buy it because they bought it, and I've always maintained that I'm not for sale, and there's going to come a day when I'm back here, if the success grows, when there'll be very, very few interviews. This is just cooperation with the record company. I don't mind doing interviews when I meet the people personally, but I don't want to become one of those pop musicians who does more interviews than records, because then people just get sick of you because you're invading the TV, you're in the living room chatting, you're in the paper chatting, and we're starting to lay down stricter rules the way it was in the 80s, because I did very, very little media exposure. It was the music that was for sale, so I didn't see it as particularly important that I was for sale.
What do you think of totally manufactured pop groups such as the Spice Girls? I know you've been known to vocalise your opinions of them in concerts.
Well, I initially avoid talking about them. I'll crack a joke about them. I think the music's fine. When I probably say something derogatory in the situation of groups, not just the Spice Girls, there's hundreds of them out there, but they're the ones that everybody knows about at the moment, and I've seen it happen before with acts like Bros. I don't know if they were big out here.
They're actually managed by the same people as the Spice Girls.
Well, it's sad, because actually the managers should be up there in the boob tubes shaking the shimmies around. I can't help but feel sorry for those girls, and I'm not saying that in a patronising way, because they're getting milked into the floor. Now, with that amount of work schedule that they've got, I mean, we were at home in England and they were on 5 TV shows in one day live. With the amount of work that they've got, how can they expect anybody to believe that they've had any input into the product? That they're not actually musicians, they're just a front for somebody else's thing, and they're very good at that. They're very good at being bubbly and vivacious and stuff. But because they're so in my face, I watch with fascination. It's a bit like watching a Grand Prix racer and waiting for him to crash. Before you know it, one of them will get pregnant, one of them will be a lesbian, one of them will be a drug addict, and everyone will forget about the music and they'll fall to bits, and then they become very, very bitter Spice Grannies. And I think that those girls, because they've got such a great foot up, they've actually got a brilliant launch pad. If music is something that they want to do, they should say, right, stop. We've promoted this one into the floor. Now we're going to do something ourselves and see how it goes. They've got no time to learn the craft. It's a scary thing and a lucky thing to be thrown in the deep end the way they have. But if they really want to be pop stars or musicians, well, they are pop stars. If they want to be pop musicians, it's time for somebody to say, okay, go and develop some knowledge of what this business is about. They don't know how they got there. The record was a hit and very nice for them. It's like winning the lottery, and they're other, I do like them. I've seen them on TV and I think they're really entertaining. It's from the industry side I don't like them. I don't like the people behind them and what their managers and their agents really think about them and the things that they're going, oh yeah, fuck them, they'll drop dead in a year, we'll just work them into the bone. I don't like that part of it. I'm not criticising the Spice Girls, I just don't like what goes on behind them, and I don't think they know, because they haven't got time to look.
The success of You Spin Me Round broke you on an international level. Now, that track is now classed as a retro song. Do you mind a song of yours being classed as retro, or did you ever think your music would be classed as retro?
Well, I'm not in that end of it, really. I'm not obsessed, and I don't watch the charts, and I don't really read the paper, and I very rarely listen to the radio. It's something that, it's a case of the devil in the deep blue sea, that when we were launching this album out here, the record company said, because we'd been away so long, because we'd signed to other labels and maybe there wasn't an Australian release, it would make it easier for them to break us into radio. And we were very reluctant to put it out because I consider we've moved on. And they said, could they remix it? And we said, absolutely not, because, I don't think the remixes are any better than the original. They're just different. But I cooperated with them, and it's one of the first time that I've cooperated with a record company on that level. When I heard the remixes, I was actually surprised, because we've never had a remix done by anybody else before. We usually do them ourselves. We didn't want to remix that track. To us, it was over and dead. They brought a remix around. I liked it. Whenever I travel around the world doing tours and live dates, it's omnipresent in clubs still. That's very nice. I don't know why, but it is. I think it still sounds quite bright and okay, but I don't really care. I mean, it's nice that it's been a hit and it's got me here and the audiences like it. I just sometimes have this, there's two people things in my head, and it's like, God, haven't you heard enough of this? And if you haven't heard enough of it, why do you expect me to perform it all the time? And also, it's done great things for us at the moment in England. It's being used in a major advertising campaign. It's going to come out again in America and be a hit. And it gets me in the door, and it's very hard to get in the door.
Now, it's currently Australian Fashion Week at the moment, and I'm just wondering what you think of the beauty and the glamour industry at the moment. It's so, like, it's very model obsessed, very beauty obsessed.
It's not, you know, oh God, I suppose I'm a victim and a perpetrator of that, really, because I'm sort of look obsessed, because you get a bit sick of seeing yourself in photos and stuff like that. What do I think of it? I think it's got its place, but I think it's run well out of control and being given too much importance. To me, the meaning of fashion, when I was a kid growing up and I thought of fashion, was something that you created yourself, the individual created. I think it's more of a uniform. Now, everybody wants what's now. Everybody wants to look like everybody else. It's almost like communism. Everybody wants the latest, whatever the hot designer is, the DKNY, whatever has happened. They all want that, and it's sort of killed a certain amount of creativity. I think those girls who are beautiful, the Naomis, the Linda Evangelistas, okay, just be beautiful and shut your mouth. I mean, I don't really approve of them going off trying to do records and movies and stuff. Stay doing what you do. Stay thin. Starve yourself. Walk down the catwalk. They're given too much importance. Just because somebody's nice to look at doesn't mean that they've got anything to say. So I appreciate individuality more than what's hip and current. I don't like the uniform thing and the conforming to certain types. If you haven't got this year's thing, you shut out of certain circles. I really don't like that, and that wasn't the way I ever began. I was a creative kid.
Yeah, because I think any band's image is quite integral to the whole package of a band. I think it's part of the excitement of liking a band, or being able to...
There's something more primal that real hardcore fans sense. It's not just the clothes.
Well, that's what I mean. That's why I think is a difference with bands like Dead or Alive. Where
the sad thing is now that, it seems to me that, even Madonna is a victim of this fashion thing to some degree, because when she started off there was a rawness and there was a certain creativity, like the bra over the sweater and all those things, and now she's become a follower of fashion. I used to think when I was growing up and there was Mark Bolan and David Bowie that they influence fashion, but now it seems that fashion influences the music industry, and I really think the fashion industry is, 80% sick, sad fucks, and I don't think it's important at all. I do like the brightness and the glamour and stuff like that. I wouldn't want to go and, although I think the records are very good, they're not my cup of tea, I wouldn't want to go and look at Oasis on stage in their anoraks and trainers, because when I used to see Top of the Pops in England as a kid, the audience didn't look like the person that was up on the platform, and it's that side of it is very dull to me, but I don't see that much creativity going on. I see singers like Justine, is it Justine from Elastica? They tartar up to look like a supermodel, and that's just not that. You can't be a supermodel and sing. You can't fucking eat when you're a supermodel. If you can't eat, you can't sing. It's a funny situation. I don't think the fashion industry and the rock industry meet very well, or if they do, the fashion industry's down there and the rock and pop industry should be up there. That's not the case, and that's down to stylists, record companies, photographers.
Yeah, because I think more in the 80s there was a lot more individuality in the way the rock stars dressed. There was more sort of for you, I saw a crossover of like gothic, gender fuck, glamour.
Yeah, it was a fusion of everything. I mean, I started off dressing up very, very early, probably at the age of 13, and God knows what I looked like. But, it fused into the punk rock movement, and the punk rock movement to me, although the major exposure of punk rock became dirty, grotty, scruffy, there was the initial thing of punk rock was just creativity, and if you couldn't be put into a category, you were just a punk rocker, and that was much more healthy. It was something new. One thing I've done before is I've had a clothes shop back in the 80s selling retro stuff because we could get hold of it and stuff. And I always think if ever I was to go back into that business, which is something that I'd like to do, but I wouldn't do this, collection palaver and this year's thing. The shop would have to be called No Future, because I really can't see anything new happening. It's all retreads of the past.
Okay, just change the subject a little bit. Do you like performing live?
I do enjoy performing live. I'm not one of those groups that is going to go on a 6-month tour, because then you start getting frayed and pretty ratty. I find, 3 or 4 weeks of performing to be a body bag schedule, because, sorry, I'm not moralising, you'll never find any hypocrisy. I very rarely drink and I don't touch drugs. If I did those things, maybe the performing would be easy because I'd be anaesthetised. I do it straight, and it's a natural energy thing, and when that runs out, or the meter's ticking, I have to keep my mental and physical health intact.
And who do you find are your strongest following? Like, I know you have different sets of followings. You have a very strong following in Japan. But who do you find comes to your shows in general?
It's a complete cross-section, and it's also one reason why I'm wary of doing interviews, because I certainly don't want to alienate anyone if they're sort of, I wouldn't say hip enough, I wouldn't say we're hip, but if they're tolerant enough to come and see us and there's an interest, anyone is welcome. People usually get onto the issue of you have a huge gay following, and I think a lot of artists actually, gay people don't specifically follow you just because you got long hair and wear a bit of makeup. In this country, to some degree, we've had our little hiccups where we arrive at a radio station and they throw an invite at us for a drag ball. I have no affinity with the drag community because I'm not wearing a bra. I don't have the luxury that the drag community... I'm not criticising the drag community, but you've got to realise I don't have the luxury of going out, getting shit-faced, insulting everyone, falling off the chair, wearing a wig and a long dress, and the next day just walking around like a middle-aged man and nobody knows I've done it. I'm an easy target. The gay community and the drag community and the lesbian community, to me, seem to be all very separate, which I think is a little bit sad, but that's, I'm not in that community, so it's bad to criticise it. I just think people are human beings, aren't they? So I would say our strongest following is among human beings.
Mm-hmm. I've been reading a few articles about you in various magazines, and I'm surprised, and I'm just wondering if you're surprised at people's reaction to the fact that you're married.
Well, it's none of their fucking business, really, and that's part of the private life, and you should never judge a book by the cover. Just because I see a lady with a shaved head and a few piercings, I don't assume she's a lesbian. And just because I may see a man who maybe looks a bit effeminate, so I don't assume he's gay. But that's just the workings of my mind. And the marriage side, it's been a very happy marriage. It's not for sale, it's private, and that's it. Why shouldn't I be married? I eat food, I shit like everybody else. Why shouldn't I be married?
Yeah, I'm just commenting more about the fact that newspapers seem to be so surprised about it, and there've been rumours started up, Pete Burns with his wife and his kids, and
no kids.
No, I know that,
but they're stupid, aren't they? They're largely stupid, and if I was to read it, I'd probably get hemorrhoids reading it. I don't read a large amount of it, and I realise it's part of the game. It doesn't touch me, and they're going to write what they want to, favourable or foul, and I can't see why. I'm here making music, and I'm here doing concerts, and I don't understand why the public really want to know those things anyway, because that's just not in my nature. When I like somebody, say I'm an admirer of someone like Madonna, I'm certainly not interested, who the father of a kid is or whether she's got a kid. I just see it as music. She looks great, nice videos, good concerts, that's it. That's where it stops for me. But I can't expect everybody else to think like me. Therefore, I can't judge the angles they come in from.
The largest scale concert you've done in Australia would have been your performance at the Sleazeball. Was it last year? Yeah. Did you like that?
Yeah, I liked it, but I get asked about these things, and what we do is we roll up probably 20 minutes before we go on, make sure everything's in place, we go on, and then we go off, and we leave because I've got something to do the next day. I saw nothing of the Sleazeball. All I wish to say about the Sleazeball is I don't think in the entire time that I've been working and doing things like that, I've had such a well-organised and professional crew, whereas the other day we arrived to do a white party, and it was the worst organisation behind the scenes that I've ever encountered, so much so that we almost blew out the show. Our part of it was good, The guy who'd organised it, maybe it was his first time and he'd bitten off more than he can chew. But I find it a bit of a shock when you arrive to do a performance and you say to somebody, all right, where's the dressing room? And they actually break down in tears because there isn't a dressing room, is a bit of a shock. The White Party, to me, will permanently, the one we did here in, well, not here, but we did it in Melbourne, will always be known in my book as the Shite Party.
You're about to perform in Sydney at the Metro, which I believe is actually a very nice venue. Now, I'm just wondering what fans or people who are coming along to hear, what can they expect?
They can expect what I give them on the night. I mean, we were talking about this last night amongst ourselves. We were going, I don't know, because I don't read other people's interviews. So what would another person say? They'd say, oh, well, I come down in a big lift and there's an explosion. There's none of that, because we don't want to over-ice the cake. And to be perfectly honest, clubs here, the level that we're at with the clubs, they don't have the facilities. You're lucky if you get a stage without holes in it. They really don't have the facilities. We've worked with some nice people. We've worked with some shysters. And I'm glad we haven't brought out the productions that we do in Japan. But I prefer doing it on this level. In Japan, we're playing to 70,000 people in a stadium, and you wonder why you even covered up your pimples, because they're so far away, and you're a little dot on the stage, and halfway through, when you've worked 6 or 8 weeks putting it through rehearsals with dancers, pyrotechnics, you think, well, really, I don't need to go on. I could just send somebody else on, and nobody'd even know because they're so far away. I do prefer the close proximity of the audience, because that's where I started, and financially, it's not very good to do it this way, but mentally, I do prefer going back to the clubs.
Yeah, well, I think the reason I asked that is I think most people wouldn't know what to expect, because I think those who see you as a dance band are so used to bands coming out in clubs and only performing a couple of songs.
They should full set. We're playing in a dance club, doing a full pop, rock, dance, whatever people categorise there is. It's just music. We're doing the full set. We do old songs, new songs, and the stuff that, of course, you're almost contractually obligated to do, like the spin me rounds, but we change it around. I don't like repetition, and I don't do the same thing every night. Sometimes 2 nights I'll do the same thing, then I'll say, can we do this song, can we do that song, because they're all there programmed on computer, and there's a hell of a large back catalogue, so it's not predictable.
Yeah, because I've heard great feedback from the gig you did at Sublime last year, that it was just fantastic.
Where was Sublime?
In the city? In
Here?
the city, yeah. You did it after Sleeves.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
Fantastic show. That you were very close to the audience, and they had a great time.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. I mean, we went somewhere called Canberra the other day, and everyone was going, oh, my God, what are you going to Canberra for? And that attitude really feeds off, and I'm thinking, oh, my God, I don't want to do this gig. But it was a fantastic gig. The audiences here have been really fantastic. Really fantastic. And that... Usually I'm really stressed out, because you don't know if anyone's going to come. I never assume anyone's going to actually turn up, because I don't really look at the press and the hype that goes on. I go and do my thing, and you usually get that tension. Is anyone going to be here? Is it even worth getting a wash? You think you're nobody in the daytime. Is it even worth taking a shower? And then they come, and they're great, and they're polite, which makes a big difference, the fact that they respond well. And you come off elated at the end of the gig. And Australia, although there's been hiccups along the way with promoters, etc., and organisation, and some other people, like some journalists saying, can you move like a cow, can you do this? No. There's been the little hiccups. What's been constantly the elating thing is the audience response. They're really polite.
And at one of the newspapers I work for, we've had requests on the internet from websites in Canada requesting any articles, anything that we can find off.
Well, that's very nice. I mean, I do, with the internet situation, because I've got some letters handed to me by what I consider people with no life, because they're saying, you've let us down, you don't reply to us on the internet. I'm not interested in the fucking internet. I just think anybody who's consumed by the internet, they must have very little else to do. I mean, I'm not even consumed by newspapers and magazines, so the internet, I'm not going to sit, reading crap and lies and stuff that go on the internet and good things and bad things. It makes no difference to me. Okay, it's a communication thing, it's a bit like pen pals, but if they want the articles, that's nice, but I don't care.
Thanks, Pete.
Come to the point of me saying, this is the mind-numbing question, but they go, well, Pete, the new image for the album. It's not a new image. Anybody who saw me in the 80s, I'm sure they look different now in the 90s. And my image hasn't really helped to sell records in some territories. People have just wished that I'd, turn into Bros, this, that and the other. Now, because certain people in the industry are getting so used to the fact that I'm always going to be a certain way that might be individual, they let me through. But last time we were here, we were having problems with the TV station because they're going, oh, well, it's a drag band and it's a transvestite band. And it certainly isn't a drag or a transvestite band. If drag and transvestites like us, that's fine. If people in wheelchairs like us, that's, if we had a big following of people in wheelchairs, does that mean we're a cripple group? And people are always looking for that angle, and it's just something that I'm too adult to sit and go, oh, yes, well, the album's called New Cleopatra, and I've cut my hair like Cleopatra, blah, blah, blah. That's just not the way it is. And they go, well, you had brown hair, now you got black hair. If I want to shave my head and, cut my nose off, I'll do it because it's expression. I don't know if the rest of Australia is aware of what I consider to be one of your greatest creative exports, somebody called Lee Bowery.
Well, there's a group of us that are very aware of him, but I don't think the majority are. Yeah.
There's a biography out. Now, to me, that was somebody who was absolutely sheer genius, who probably, I don't know if he had any real talent in doing a project, but his real talent was changing his body and changing the way he looked and stuff, just for his, I wouldn't say art, because art to me conjures up pretension. Just for his own buzz, he just did it, and he was a great thing, and I think Australia should be proud of something like Lee Bowery, and he should get more recognition here, because he sort of made a lot of us in England think that Australia was a really, really hip, swinging, creative, crazy place, and it's a little bit of a letdown that it's not full of Lee Bowerys.
Yeah.
But he was good. He wasn't being a transvestite. He wasn't doing drag. He was just making people think, and it's good. Anything, whether it's good or bad, as long as it makes people think. I'm constantly exposed, and I have no awareness of politics, to somebody like Pauline Hanson. I keep hearing it on the news, and I have to ask somebody, what's she about? And I heard what she's about. Well, I think that the evil that she seems to be conveying, if people behind the scenes didn't really half agree with her, they'd give her no media exposure, because she's just a clown. The best way of dealing with things like that, somebody who's got that evil bent in them, is to completely ignore them. Don't say her name. I mean, I'm doing it here because I'm talking to you, but people shouldn't say her name or acknowledge it, and she'll just go away. She's thriving on the publicity she's getting. If you... Oh, I don't know. I've sort of lost the thread now. Hi, this is Pete Burns, the singer in Dead or Alive, on the Friday morning breakfast show with Sveta.